This is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. We are reflecting on traveling and transit today, Monday, October 2nd, 2023. And we have with us live in the studio at WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM, Ashish Sen. He has an extensive record of research, teaching, and public service. He has been on the board of CPS. He has been on the board of the CTA. He has worked on the Planning Commission in India, and he has worked in the Department of Transportation with the U.S. Department of Transportation. Welcome, Ashish. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay.
Great. Yes.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. So out of so much work that you have done over your long career, what is most important to you that you feel that you have accomplished that affected the most people?
Well, well, actually, there's a lot of things that I could mention that I'm proud of. When I worked for at the BTS in Washington, I sort of modernized the place. I, brought it from a sort of a pre-computer age to a computer age.
And of course, BTS is the
Bureau of Transportation Statistics.
And that is at a part of the Department of Transportation.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And we won some awards for it. And I worked for the Indian Planning Commission and did a number of things, which and in CPS, I think I made some contributions, but let me go back to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics. It's not so much what I did, but what the Department of Transportation was doing, of which I was a part of. Mm-hmm. They did a lot of very exciting things, which are coming to full fruition now. Mm-hmm. One of which, of course, actually was led by a former student of mine, Christine Johnson. We started developing intelligent vehicles, intelligent cars, which are now driverless cars. We're talking about it a lot. But
what the year was that when Christine Johnson started working on intelligent vehicles?
In the late 90s. And she, when the government changed over, when Bush came in, she moved to something else. So she was done about the year 2000. Mm-hmm. And so now we're getting these intelligent vehicles, which is really going to, in my lifetime in transportation, I don't think I've seen a greater change in the transportation landscape than what is happening right now.
Well, in other words, you mean it's quite a paradigm shift.
Enormous paradigm shift. And I'm not entirely sure that governmental entities are paying enough attention to these things, because we don't know what the future of transportation will hold. It will be something very different, and we need to prepare for that. And but the beginnings of it occurred while I was in the Department of Transportation.
Well, in your opinion, you said that they're not doing enough to prepare for the future. If you had a say in it, what do they need to do in order for us to have a better future using these intelligent vehicles?
I think there's certain things that they could implement right now, but more importantly, I think I think government needs to have at every level, needs to have a panel and start some research studies to see how to handle the arrival of autonomous vehicles and other things that go along with it. Mm-hmm. As far as I mentioned, that things that they could implement right now, our traffic lights are still in being timed the same way they were timed 50 years ago.
And how should they be timed in order for us to travel and work better?
I beg your pardon?
How should they be timed versus how they are timed now?
Well, I think they need to again study it
Mhm.
and have, as far as traffic, there are two different ways one could do it. One is more transit oriented, which I favor, and the other is more auto oriented, or try to find a compromise between the two. Now, as far as transit oriented is concerned, I would like to see, and I was pushing for this when I was on the CTA board, but it hasn't really happened, is that every time a bus approaches a traffic light, it turns green. So buses get to travel essentially as fast as cars, because buses stop for bus stops, cars stop at red lights. So and the bus is moving faster. It's a better level of service. More people will use it. It's better for everyone.
And there is a way to account for pedestrians too. If the light were suddenly to turn green, and but there is enough time, there could easily be enough time for pedestrians to
yes, because
travel back over.
It'll happen as the bus approaches.
Oh,
when the bus is within a certain distance, the light will turn green. And there will be enough time. I mean, this is being done all over. I mean, it's just not being done enough.
Oh, okay.
I think also this you could give the same level of service with fewer vehicles, fewer buses, because if buses travel faster, then you need fewer buses to give the same level of service. So when I was on the CTA board, I thought that we could use the savings to improve service, have more buses, more frequency, or more routes. But now, with the CTA in some trouble, with revenue trouble, maybe the savings might be of some benefit.
Exactly. And you mentioned too that a lot of this technology is already in place, because let's look at bus tracker. They already could see where the bus is. Now it's only the matter of implementing the communication with the traffic lights, right?
Yes. You're absolutely right. Yes. Also, there are many ways of doing this. I'm not an engineer, so I shouldn't get too much into it. One is through the bus tracker system, and the other is with a beacon from the bus itself, which the traffic light reads and changes green. We have it for ambulances right now in some of the Chicago suburbs.
Oh.
And we have some of this in the suburban area, Chicago suburban area, but not much. We have some of it. I'd like to see that all over the city, and I think that that'll do good.
Yes, definitely. What about is the city of Chicago behind some other cities in implementing this technology?
It's behind some other cities, yes, but but I think on the whole, cities have not done very well with implementing the technologies that are available.
And have you any idea why that is the case? Is it not enough revenue or not enough ambition?
I don't know. This is more of a political issue of which I don't know a whole lot about. But one of which is that I could take a stab and say that that's because there's no pro driver lobbying agency.
Oh.
I mean, the bicyclists have their lobbying agency with lobbying groups, and transit has some, and is generally very favorably looked on, but the drivers don't. The AAA used to be that, but they have become more of an they're not doing that much anymore.
Do you know what they are doing instead that is so important to them that they're not paying attention to this?
I'm sorry.
AAA, do you have any idea what they are concentrating on now instead of working on
Well,
this that would be
they
so
provide a
helpful?
lot of services. I mean, if your car breaks down, they send a tow truck.
Mhm.
They pay for, I think they pay for lawyers' fees if you get a traffic ticket. They do a lot of things, but then I don't think they're doing enough of the lobbying.
Mhm.
You know, they're not telling the government that you need to get better traffic light system. Now, why it's not happening on the transit side, I don't know. That's a question that's sort of beyond my capability.
In what year were you on the CTA board?
I was on the CTA board. I don't even remember. I think about 2011 to 2015 or 2016.
Mhm. And at that time, because right now I am kind of working on with my partner on how to get more accessibility to stations that have been renovated uh, recently, like about in the last 10 years, specifically the Jarvis Red Line and Howard Red Line, not Howard Red Line, the Morse Red Line stations. And, they spent a lot of money and they also, renovated it, but without making it accessible, such
Did
as
they
with.
not?
Mhm.
I thought that they had to.
Exactly, but they did not. I think the station was closed down and there was the street was closed down. And then when by the time everything was done, no elevator at the Morse Red Line and no elevator at the Jarvis Red Line.
Okay, I didn't know that. I'm very surprised because I thought that any innovation would require making it accessible.
Mm. Oh.
I'm not a lawyer, but I thought that the ATA requirements required it. But I'm really surprised.
Okay. So when you were on the CTA board, what were the issues that they were concerned about? Specifically, I do want to know if they had any meetings, any projects as to making the CTA more accessible all throughout, like let's say stations, buses, trains. Did you work on that with this when you were on the CTA board?
There was a very high level of consciousness. There was a board member who made that his highest priority, and overall it was very well. I mean, it was something that we thought about a lot. And at that time, it was a different story because the CTA was an extremely well-run organization when I was there. Not because of me, I think more because of the president, Forrest Claypool, than any other reason. But it was a very well-run organization. It was financially secure, and so things were going well. Now, we approved. It was my board that approved the red line. In fact, it was even before I got on the board that the red purple extension was improvements were being considered.
Oh, you mean the ones that are happening now?
Yeah.
Oh.
It takes a long time to go through the process. And my impression, and again, obviously it was a faulty impression, was that all the stations would be, every station you would have access for,
Yes, definitely. For the persons with disabilities,
Yes.
for the families with children, and then and seniors.
Yeah, a person with disability. Now, the senior is a different issue altogether because I don't know. This is something I don't know, but my impression is that seniors are not all that, concerned about transit. But I may be wrong here.
We have had some constituents, a lot of constituents actually, that came to us complaining about how hard the, let's say, Morse Red Line without an elevator made life for them. For one of our constituents actually said that she would have stayed in the city and teaching. She was a tutor at Malcolm X College, and then when she started having mobility issues, she couldn't walk up the stairs and take the red line to her job anymore. And that caused her to no longer work there. She enjoyed working at Malcolm X College, and then she had to move to the suburbs just because of that.
It could be, but of course, the stations are not complete yet. I mean, all the reconstruction that we're talking about in the red line stations, they're not finished yet.
Yeah, well, they did
And-
shut down the whole those two stations. They did shut down those two stations and did a lot of remodeling. But they after closed down the street to remodel.
Yes.
But after they finished remodeling, the people that were there when they finished, I wasn't there at that time, but people have told me they were so surprised that after they finished, there was no elevator. Yes, none at all.
I'm surprised.
Yes. Well, when you said that Forrest Claypool ran the CTA very well, what were the accomplishments at that time? Was it the approval and the starting the ball rolling for the RPM, the Red Purple Line modernization plan?
Some of those may have even started before Forrest. The plan, because it takes a long time before implementation. And
could you describe a little bit of the process? I've heard it before, but it's very complicated. So maybe you could explain it
I would be the best person to do that. But I suppose in simple terms, it's initiated by the local, like the CTA in this case, but the state has to weigh in, and then the federal government provides a large part of the money.
Yes. Yes.
And so all of this, getting all this money together and simultaneously doing the planning and the engineering work, it takes a long time.
Right.
Maybe it shouldn't, but it does.
Yes, definitely. Maybe it shouldn't, because by the time they finish, it might be like 1 or 2 generations later that it's completed.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about the red line extension in the south side. By the time it actually comes to pass, there may be a good question whether we will need it.
Why do you think that we will not need it? What will be there in its place that the people could use and not need the red line all the way down to 130th?
I can't answer that question, but the thing is that transportation is changing so rapidly. So it's very likely, I mean, I was sort of being facetious a little bit, that it's very likely that we will always need, rail transit, but we don't know. I mean, we may have, for instance, driverless buses serving the same route, but we don't know what the shape of transit. So my personal feeling would be that, there are many things involved in this. A $2 billion project brings a lot of federal money into Chicago, which is a good thing. And the service may in fact be a good thing, but I would be very hesitant starting any large capital projects right now because of the nature, in 10 years transportation will be very different. And we don't know in what way it will be different. So it could become like the Erie Canal, which was kind of outdated by the day it opened, because railways had come in. I mean, going back a couple of hundred years.
Oh, no, it's very relevant because we learn from history. That's why we should understand history. No, that's an excellent example. When, for instance, let's say I've been discussing this with my good friend, and he mentioned that one of our good friends who lives on the south side, he would he had to go back home in time, like take the bus and get back home in time. Otherwise, there would be no more buses for the rest of the day. But then that caused him not be able to become employed at jobs which for which he was well qualified on the north side. And also even for job fairs, he wanted to go to job fairs, but then he wasn't able to stay for as long as he needed to in order to speak with various employers. So if he experienced that, we were assuming that there would be others too that experience that, and that's why it's very essential that there is better transportation that connects the south side with the city.
Well, yes, the city is a very big city. I mean,
Mhm.
that's an issue. I would, of course, like to see transit, both rapid transit and buses move faster.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, that can only make what a minor difference. But still, I don't see any reason why we have so many train stations on the rapid transit line. Because
Mhm.
every time there's a station, that means it delays.
Got it. Mhm.
So but and I'd like to have trains move faster to help your friend.
Mhm.
But still, the city is a very big city,
Mhm.
and whether they go by train or bus or even by car, it takes a long time. And congestion is terrible right now.
Mhm.
Automobile congestion.
Mhm. And of course, the automobile congestion also causes a lot of pollution
Yes,
and global warming as well.
yes, yeah. Congestion causes a lot of hydrocarbons in the
Yes, and
uh,
health issues. I was just talking about that on my other segment today about how the west side is very it's a hotspot for nitrogen dioxide,
yes.
and people, the 501,000 people who live there, are impacted 16 to 32% more than an average Chicagoan, because they're located in industrialized areas and also in highly trafficked areas. The thing is that it's very sad. We were just discussing that we need more public transit to reach these neighborhoods. But then there's the auto traffic that goes by, and then that's affecting those residents who are do not have vehicles, but they're affected by the emissions.
Well, buses emit too.
Yes,
So, I mean,
definitely.
I wish that the fleet would become more electric
Mhm.
soon, and I think that's likely to happen. But even then, this is probably not going to take at least 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, but the congestion is terrible, and as you pointed out, it has a major, profound effect on environmental quality and as well as on climate change.
Mhm. Do you've been in India, and then of course you see what's happening over here in the U.S. Well, about the problems that we were discussing. Are there any countries that are doing better, that are able, or other cities that are doing better, that have made the public transit go move faster, and with that improvement, has the quality of life improved for those areas, if such an area does exist?
I don't know the answer.
Oh, no, no, that's okay. That's okay. That would be that would be like an additional project for you to gather all the research, which you're very good at.
Yes, someone probably knows that answer, but but I don't.
Mm,
But I think we also look to transit to to solve too many problems.
mm,
I don't think transit is going to solve the problem of global, of
mm,
climate change.
mm,
It, it will carry very few people all the time. And the same thing with bicycles. They're not. So ultimately, we've got to go into what we are doing, which is moving towards electric cars,
mm,
as far as climate change is concerned. Uh, so that's probably what we have to do and find ways of generating electricity without fossil fuels.
Mhm. When you were at the BTS in 1998, you served on the executive committee of the Transportation Research
Research Board.
Board, yes, and was one of the lead authors of Changing Face of Transportation, the Clinton administration's transportation legacy document, which reviewed the last 25 years of transportation at that time and speculated on the next 25 years. So in the author speculations of national transportation in the next 25 years, how did the speculations compare to what has
Actually
subsequently
happened.
transpired?
Well, actually, the 25 years we were talking about is
Mhm.
about to expire in the
Mhm.
future.
Yes.
And to some extent, it worked. For instance, give you an example. Uh, Traffic fatalities at that time were more like 43,000 people um, per year
Mhm.
were killed in traffic accidents.
Mhm.
And we projected it to decline quite a bit.
Mhm.
And it did, except after about 10 years, it started climbing again. And we don't know exactly why, but I think it's almost up to where it was. But that's not something we could forecast very well, because I think it probably has something to do with, I don't know what.
Mhm.
I think that's a good question. I think some people blame cell phone use, but I don't know.
Mhm.
But conditions have changed, so some of our forecasts didn't work out, but it started working out, right?
Mhm. Were there any other parts of that those speculations and those predictions? What else happened or did not happen?
It's a hard question to remember. I don't think we forecast congestion becoming this bad.
Mm-hmm.
That was that's a bit of a surprise. And I'm talking about traffic congestion.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I don't remember.
Mm. Well, it's right
When
now.
people forecast, you rather forget, So it's a
That's
very
okay.
conscious effort to forget.
Yeah, no, that's okay because you mentioned congestion, and I'm assuming that might be on account of family. Everybody has a vehicle for themselves. If they could afford it, then that contributes to the congestion. Do you have any data about at when you were doing the report, when you were researching the report at that time, were people so obsessed with acquiring so many cars per family?
Uh, I think we do have some projections for auto ownership, but I don't remember very well. Uh, Number of cars may, to what extent it causes congestion is not clear, because you can only use one car at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably more related to the number of drivers than the number of cars, and that has only changed because population has changed. So number of percentage of people who can drive has probably not changed a whole lot. I think the increase in congestion is in part because of trucking and delivery vehicles and various things like that. But the question is, how do we solve it right now? And how do we improve? We can't solve it. You can improve things. And one of which is, of course, with traffic lights. There are many places in Chicago where you have traffic lights very close to each other, but they're not synchronized. So they almost act like a barrier. And those are a few things that could be done almost immediately.
Do you happen to know where such traffic lights are concentrated? Is it all over the city
All
or?
over the place, different places, especially where there are diagonal streets and things, near diagonal streets. But there are several places. I mean, I mentioned a suburban place where things were quite bad was on Dewey and Lincoln.
Mhm.
It's suburban. But at one time, I think it may still be true, the lights were really out of sync. So things like that can be done. Um,
Mhm.
the
And actually, something like that is relatively easy to solve, right? They could just like study it and then synchronize it, and then right now it's set to the wrong time. All they have to do is set it correctly.
Yeah, well, it's probably harder to do than it appears. But I'll tell a story, because this is told to me by Mr. LaPlante, who used to be, I think, commissioner of the Department of Transportation. Unfortunately, Mr. LaPlante died of COVID some time ago. But he told me the story, which was, I think, an interesting, that Mayor Daley, the first Mayor Daley,
Mhm.
he was very concerned about traffic flow. So he arranged that traffic signals be quarter mile apart.
Mhm. Mhm.
And at 30 miles an hour, if the if contiguous lights alternated,
Mhm.
red and green, so if you, in theory, if you got through one traffic light, you'll never have to stop again. The
Mhm.
traffic flow would go.
Mhm.
And in those days, this was operated with clocks, and he had an army of people who went and made sure the clocks were working right.
Wow. Mhm.
So we had, but subsequent mayors noticed that the people who were doing this were patronage workers and fired them, and the
Mhm.
traffic lights went all askew.
Oh.
But now, of course, we've added so many traffic lights.
Mhm.
Uh, so this whole old system doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
And personally, you know, I wish we hadn't added so many traffic lights and
Do you
so
know?
many stop signs and so on. But that's a
uh,
different question that you can get to.
So I guess maybe they added because they were concerned about the pedestrians not having to walk that far to cross the street, right? Or why else would they add more?
I don't know. I mean, in part, the decision is that it's the local alderman has a big say in it.
Mhm.
Uh, but transportation is a citywide, nationwide issue. It's not a local issue,
Mhm.
because the users of the road near your house are not people who live there.
Right. Otherwise, they would be on the road going
So,
by. Mm.
giving having aldermen have a big say in it is, I think, probably a wrong thing. Transportation should be at least at a mayoral level, I mean, the city level, citywide level. And, I mean, not recently, a few years ago, they were threatening, the local alderman was threatening to do things on Ridge Avenue
Mm.
and people were up in arms, and well, it didn't get done. But the thing is, that shouldn't happen. I mean, Ridge Avenue.
Are you talking about the issue with the little bridge on Ridge and
No, it's not
Dept?
a bridge. It was just some people are concerned about the high traffic flow and wanted to do some things to slow it down.
What was that around Pulaski Road or something like that?
No, no,
I can't remember.
Ridge. I think Ridge Avenue, not near Pulaski. I think between Clark and Broadway.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, my memory is is a little weak on this matter. But the thing is that the main point is that I don't think that aldermen should have tremendous say in traffic control. They could
Mhm.
have some light advisory
Mhm.
position, but it should be more a citywide thing.
Mhm.
And this also means that the departments of transportation should have good sized staff of competent people doing things.
Mhm.
I don't know what they have anymore. At one time, the Department of Public Works, as it was called, had some very, very good people. I don't know what they have now.
Mhm. And when they had the good people, do you still remember who was the mayor at that time?
Oh, I'm going back to the first Mayor Daley.
Oh, okay.
And yeah,
Mhm.
he put some very good, and some of them stayed. I mean, he did a good job. Um, I've lost track of where they were. Even under the second Mayor Daley, which is the last, they had some good people,
Mhm.
but after that, I have lost track.
When you were more involved in the CTA, Did you have anything to, did you know any background about like the signs? Because it seems as
About what?
signs, traffic signs, like the street signs, etc. Because it seems as if right now there's a shortage of sign workers, and
No,
and necessary signs are not being put up.
I, I don't know much about that.
Oh, that's okay.
You're not talking about signs for city. You're talking about on road signs.
Yes, on roads, yes,
Yeah.
city
No,
streets.
yeah. Sometimes you drive and you don't know where you are. Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the causes are and why it's like that.
Yeah, well, since like sometimes maybe they need a stop sign somewhere, or maybe a sign is damaged and needs replacement. It's like it takes forever because they don't have enough people working.
It could well be. Could well be. And also, I think they use contractors a bit much. I think. I think they should have more in-house capacity. Not they should use contractors. It's not that but they should have somewhat more in-house capacity. So, some things that someone could just go out and fix is, now they have to make a contract for it and all that. So.
Oh yes, yes, definitely. Yes, we understand. I understand that because it takes too much time to find a vendor. But if you already have someone there, and you could just assign that person to do the work.
Yes. I mean, there are problems with it too, but in general, I think they should have more people. I agree with you. They should have more people.
Have you noticed in your extensive contacts and work with all these different government agencies, has there been a move to hire more contractors rather than have in-house help?
I think that's generally has been a tendency, at least was a tendency for a while. I think it may be maybe still right now. But yeah, I think there's been a sort of a move towards hiring more outside help.
And is that in various like local level, state level, federal level? Do you see that trend across levels?
Yes, at all levels. There, a lot of in-house capacity is was being. I've not been. I mean, anything I'm saying is sort of like ancient history because I've not been in that picture for a long time. But yeah, there has been a general move towards, using contractors.
Do you have any insight when you had your meetings about the mindset? Why the move toward contractors instead of in-house? Did you were you able to find any insight on that?
Oh, that may be a political issue.
Okay, that's okay.
I'll leave it to you to guess what that political issue may be.
Okay, yes. Yeah, well, that's a good answer. It really is because then, well, I understand. You were also active in the Asian diaspora. So could you tell us a little bit about your activist work in that?
Well, the issues that I was involved with, I mean, those times have really changed a lot. You see, now we have a vice president of the United States has part South Asian. We have all kinds of Asians in cabinet, and we turn on TV, radio. We have Asians everywhere. I was very pleased to see Manu Raju having his own show now. I remember Manu Raju when he was a little child. But at my time, in the 80s and 90s, there was quite a formidable glass ceiling for Asians. And it affected even me. I was affected by the glass ceiling. I got the story that, if I wanted an administrative job, they said, "Oh, you're so brilliant in your work. Why would you want such a job?" Or, the picture of the hardworking Asian who kept his head down and didn't try to do much else. So if I were to make any contribution, I think the contributions I made was to put little holes in the glass ceiling. When I got on the Chicago School Board, the CPS board, there were no of the people who were briefing us, the senior management people. There was not one Asian face. So I raised a row about it, and a number of Asians got promoted rather rapidly because it just embarrassed people into it. Also, when I was in Washington, and I think I may have been among the senior most Asians in the Clinton administration, at least at one stage, I think I was. Um, but a number of Asian Americans started working in my department, my agency, not because I tried to do anything, but just by my very presence. They felt more comfortable working where the boss was an Asian American. Asians are generally very good workers anyway, but this way they didn't feel that if they had an issue, they could always come to me, which was an easier thing. So I think in that sense, I was effective. I was instrumental in being involved with starting a number of Asian American organizations. The Indo-American Center, which I think I was on the first board, whether I was the founder or not, I was certainly on the first board. And I played a role in getting it started because one of the things we needed was to get a 501c3 designation, which is the tax-exempt designation. And Nancy Chen at that time was working for Senator Durbin. And she and she told me what to do, and I was running around doing it so as to get the 501c3 designation for the American Center. And our bylaws changed so much that the only copy of the bylaws was available on my computer because I was changing the bylaws to meet the requirements of IRS. And then the Asian American Institute got started, and I was involved in the starting of that. So I was involved in starting a number of organizations whose main aim, in fact, I think, or one of his primary aims was breaking the glass ceiling. So in that sense, we were, not me alone, but all of us together were enormously successful because I think we have broken the glass ceiling. So.
And so, in other words, I did see that, let's say for the the South Asian Center, was it the name?
The Indo-American Center? Oh, Southeast Asian.
Yeah, Southeast Asian Center. Yeah, there were a lot of programs with helping the Asians access resources and daycare and helping seniors.
Yes.
But breaking those resources were instrumental in helping the Asians break the glass ceiling, right?
It started with the Vietnamese refugees who were coming in, and I had the opportunity to serve as the chairman of their board. But as chairman of the board, you don't get involved so much in day-to-day activities, but they do really good work. I think Sano and Peter Poor, who do the work there, have done a great job, both in their senior programs, and they have a school, a preschool, which I think prepares kids very well. And so they've been very successful. I've been out of touch with it because when COVID came, I resigned from the board because getting around was difficult. I mean, I was afraid of getting around. So I thought someone else should take over my role as chairman, and they've got other people. And they still have their old original founders, which are Peter and San. And I think they've been doing great work.
When you say that you've helped them break the glass ceiling and you've done a lot of work on that, what?
Not me alone. I mean,
I understand.
We collectively.
Yes. Well, what does need to be done in order to break the glass ceiling? Is it mentoring? Is it resources? What's really important?
I think now the glass ceiling is very largely broken.
I understand, but it's interesting to know, how it was broken because that might apply to other obstacles in a lot of people's lives?
I think it was easier to break because Asian Americans bring the talents
Mhm.
that make it almost embarrassing not to break the ceiling.
Mhm.
They're very, very competent. In general, there's a lot of very competent people. Uh, I was, I mean, it's sort of amazing to me right now, changing the subject slightly, as to how many major U.S. corporations, the CEOs are actually Asian. I mean, they're not even, I mean, Asian American, but they emigrated. I mean,
Mhm.
and it's because of the very high level of education and love of education that Asian Americans bring, and that's true of almost of most Asian American groups. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's true of all, because we're a very diverse community,
Sure, yes.
you know. But the two large communities, the Indians and South Asian Indians, Pakistanis, and Chinese, and Koreans. I mean, there's a great reverence for education,
Mhm.
and it's recently I was over in a restaurant on Argyle,
Mhm.
and little child, who's obviously the son of the owner,
Oh.
was sitting in a corner.
Mhm.
What was he doing? He
Homework.
was studying, yeah. And throughout,
Mhm.
and the at one time I was invited to give out prizes and the way we had prizes all on a table,
Mhm.
and we asked the kids in order come up and choose their own prize.
Mhm.
And what were the Asian kids? They were only Asian kids.
Uh-huh.
What were they choosing? Books, book bags, not toys, not games.
Mhm.
So it was easy to for that to happen. So what we really had to do was to push for it,
Mhm.
and I had some minor role in pushing for it. Others pushed. Um, uh, the U of I Board of Trustees got Niranjan Shah, who I think helped a lot of giving Asian Americans prominent position on the
Oh.
board. But that was after I had actually retired, so he didn't help me. But I think he elevated the position of it. And once they get in and people see competent work, then it's easier for the next person. I used to joke at one time that people have a picture of a person in a job, like for a CEO, they expect them to be, 6 foot and blonde, and but that's their picture of that person.
Mhm.
Um, so you need to change that picture. So
Mhm.
now the picture has broadened out, and that includes people of other, who are not, tall and blonde, but are, have colors like ours, or black, or whatever.
Mhm.
So I think overall the glass ceiling is crumbling to some extent, not just for Asian Americans, but for others. But Asian Americans more than others, I think we've done well.
Mhm. What about violence against Asian Americans? Did you when you were at the Southeast Asian Center, was that an important issue to address at that time, because it's still happening now?
Yes. Well, there's not much you can do about stupidity.
Mhm.
And, an Asian American in Chicago is not responsible for the action of the Chinese government or the Japanese government, for that matter.
Right, but people
Yes,
don't understand, and they just look for scapegoats.
I don't know what you can do about stupidity.
Mhm.
Uh, if the stupidity is high enough level, even education doesn't help.
Right. But then if people were facing violence, did
Yeah.
the center have to assist people, let's say, with filing police reports or other matters as a result of violence against them.
Yeah, well, we're getting more and more anti-hate legislation. I think
Exactly.
that's very important. And yeah, I think I you know, I've been complaining too much, so I shouldn't keep adding to complaints. But I think the police is terribly understaffed,
Mm-hmm.
and and uh, we should also have. We do have some Asians in the Chicago Police Department in high positions. We probably should have some more, but the staff has to increase because I was involved. Someone hit my car. It was a hit and run.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to file a police report, and they took the report, but they said, maybe we'll get back to you.
Well, at least they were truthful.
A friend of mine who's involved in Southeast Asia Center was assaulted, and they filed a report about the assault, and nothing happened. I mean, it's getting really, the police enforcement is really getting to be. I suppose there are many other issues involved, but the staffing is certainly one of them. People talk about police morale, and that may be an issue too. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I'd like to feel safer. I think you would too. And we would all like to feel a whole lot safer than we do feel.
And how prevalent is the Asian sentiment right now about their safety?
I would imagine there's a fair amount of concern. If I feel concerned, and I mean, I'm not one of the targeted groups right now, but I'm as concerned as most citizens of the city are. Because we're getting carjacked, we're getting robbed, we're getting killed. So it's we need to do something about it.
When you were at the CPS, how did you get on the board, and what were the issues then, and how do those issues apply to what's happening now, if as much as you know about what's happening?
Well, we were in a peculiar time because the legislation created so-called independent board. We were not supposedly beholden to the mayor or anything like that. And the way they set it up is that they set up a committee, an elected committee, that would go and crack down board members. And they were supposed to present three people for every seat to the mayor, and the mayor got to pick one of the three. So it's sort of semi-independent. That's how, and in my case, someone told me that I should throw my hat in, and a couple of us, there were two Asians who sort of made it to the end. And fortunately, I got support even from the Chinese community, while the other Asian candidate was Chinese. So, so I got it. Now it's pretty much all the mayor appoints the committee, the entire board. And that happened, that change took place in 1995. So we were the last of our kind. And now the mayor just appoints the entire board.
Well, there is a little change coming up now, because the board will be elected.
Yes, in the future the board will be partially elected.
And yeah,
I was not in favor of that.
Not in favor of
an elected board.
Why not?
Well, because a number of reasons. That we could be talking for an hour on this subject. Is that I think education is not something that is really a democratic thing. We need to have people who want to hold high standards, because left to entirely democratic principles, I don't know what education will become. And in small towns, it's a different thing, where there are elected boards and the board interacts with parents and so on. But in a large city where there's a very good chance that even the union will take control of the board.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's appointed by the mayor was a good thing. And even better would have been if the mayor that if they divorced the day-to-day management from the standards for students to achieve, as they do in some other countries. So because there's always a danger of watering down the levels of education. I was just to give you an example. While I was on the board, I used to read all the letters that came from various people to the board. Letters from parents. I did not see one letter in my entire stay which said, "Are you preparing my child for a good job? Are you preparing my child to have a good life?" Always, something else. And, so it makes you feel that maybe one should separate out standards from the day-to-day management of the system.
So what you're saying is that the parents were complaining about things that happened in school and maybe conditions at the school rather than concentrating on their child actually becoming well educated.
Yes.
When you were on the CPS,
maybe because the Asian American parents weren't writing to me.
Yeah, they weren't, right?
No, I didn't get many letters from Asian American parents.
I think that Asians are many of the Asians are not that politically inclined,
That's
right?
right.
When you were on the CPS school board board, how what were your solutions? And at that time, let's say there were underperforming schools. Uh, any work and any initiatives? What discussions that did you have that could improve performing schools?
Well, that was just about coming in when my term ended. And some of the same things that we are talking about now about closing underperforming schools or sending help, all of those things were beginning to come up. And things actually did improve a lot after we left. So maybe we were messing it up, I don't know. But after we left, after my board left, I think things really improved quite a bit over the next 7-8 years. I don't know what happened after that. I was very pleased about 20 years ago to learn that 2 of the top schools in the country were in the Chicago system.
Oh, CPS?
Yeah.
Oh.
The Walter Payton and North Side, I think. I think those 2 were among, and those 2 didn't even exist at my time. So.
And what about the charter schools? When did those come in? Were they under your watch, or
that came after my time? The board I was involved in would never have approved charter schools. And I did one thing that I was the one who moved the motion that schools not be closed. There was a lot of pressure to close schools, and I made the motion not to close any schools.
And what happened with your motion?
It was approved.
Okay. So
with the crowd yelling and screaming, if someone on the board makes a motion like that, who's going to oppose it?
Right. So at that time, you were able to stop the schools from being closed.
Yes.
And why were the schools? Were they the conditions, or just that they were underperforming, or both?
Well, I think it was a sort of a semi-political decision to try and close some schools, and it was left up to the management to choose the schools to the ones to close.
Mm.
And the decision, I mean, it didn't make, what we got in front of us, to me, didn't make sense. There were, we were closing some good schools. It may have been a poison pill, that was sent up. But in any case, um, it just didn't make sense. The all issues about gang boundaries, and it would have been a mess.
Mhm. And what about the resources? Oh, by the way, this is WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. And we have with us at Wizard, Professor Ashish Sen. Do you still teach at the UIC? Or do you still teach at
No.
you totally retired?
I retired 25 years ago.
Oh, okay.
After I retired, I went to work for the federal government.
Yes. Okay. So the main issues at that time were just for the Chicago public schools was the closing or not closing schools and how to address the underperforming. Were the issues kind of like the same as they are now?
I don't know what the issues right now are, but there was also there was some corruption going on in the school system. And in fact, last 2 or 3 years of my stay on it, I was really involved in fighting corruption. And some people actually ended up going to jail. And I know that I called the FBI on them.
Yeah, was it like the administrators in the various schools, or was it
It was
CPS?
the ones that I was concerned was with the central administration. But we later found that all sorts of things were going on in the schools too. And I don't know to what extent it's being cleaned up.
Yeah, because of course there's a lot of money involved there. Perhaps
Yes.
If it were cleaned up totally, then we would have a lot more money for the kids.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's like stealing from the children.
Yes. So when in 2014, when Governor Pat Quinn appointed you to the Northeastern Illinois Public Transit Task Force, what just to recommend any overhauling of the entire region's transit system. What transpired there? Was it what we were discussing earlier about the transit being faster, or were there other issues to be addressed at that time?
Look, I think we've covered some of the issues that came out of that discussion, especially on the issue of technology. We pushed technology quite heavily, but there were some other things that got pushed that were not unanimously supported within the committee, but did come out of it. One of which was to merge Metra, CTA, and
Too much?
merge them together into one entity.
Oh, yes, we've heard a lot about that. Is there any chance that will happen?
I hope not. I think the cultures are very different. Bringing them together will require a long time to bring all the cultures together. That doesn't mean that more cooperation can't take place. In fact, there could be better cooperation to some extent. But things between PACE and CTA, there was very good cooperation. Metra is a little different because there's a bit of a railroad culture, which is different from a rapid transit culture. But there was also a thing someone tried to bring the idea of pulling the tollway under the same umbrella, which actually I don't think is going to ever happen. But if it happened, it may not be such a bad idea because the surplus funds from the tollway could support transit. But the same sort of thing happened in New York, and New York hasn't done so well with them. So that's one of the things that didn't get implemented, and there was a lot of difference of opinion on the panel.
I'm merging them, you mean, right? I'm merging the various systems together.
Yes.
Okay. Sure. When you mentioned that Metra is a railroad culture, what is a railroad culture?
Oh, I wish I would ask me that question. it's different. I mean, even having an automated fare system took a long time in Metra. Uh, because they like the idea of people, conductors walking up and down, and and the fare structure of Metra is totally different from the fare structure in the CTA and PACE. The numbers are much larger, and they're all distance based, and it's different.
See, a lot of times, when people ride the metro, they're spaced so far apart every train. If you miss one train, you might have
Yes.
to wait so long for the next one. Is it possible to increase is it
Frequency?
viable? Yes.
It's a financial issue.
Mhm.
I mean, it will cost more.
Mhm.
Now, if you, I think technologically there should probably is not a major issue there, but I think it's a cost issue.
What about the use? Do you, from what you see for ridership on the metro, would it help? But if it were more frequent, would we get more riders? Do you think?
I'm sure they've studied it, whether the increased ridership would compensate for the increased cost. I don't know. And in fact, right now, I think Metra is in some considerable trouble with ridership declines and so on.
Was the ridership decline mostly on account of
COVID?
COVID? Yeah. Yes.
I would imagine the most recent, yeah, it is.
Mhm.
I think the number of people are not going into work as often as they were.
Yes, that is true. And for the merging of all three, the CTA Pace and the Metra, it would be so helpful for the riders if it were one pay structure, so that we just tapping a card we'll be able to ride on all three of them. Do you know if there was any talk toward that?
There's been some talk, but one can arrange for that even without merging the systems. But the thing is that the Metra fares are so much higher than the others,
Right.
that they are sort of reluctant to get too close to that. It can be worked. I mean, if there's a will, it can be worked out. But hasn't so far worked out that well.
So there is a little bit of a reluctance on the part of Metra to do that, right?
Well, because they would lose fare, But something can be worked out, I'm sure. There's a discussion, and but I don't know. I mean, it's a question of it's something for the RTA to look into.
Yes. Yes. When you were in India and working there, could you just just talk a little bit about your work over there, and then do you see any uh, connection between what's happening there and what's happening here, and could you draw maybe some conclusions about what is happening here based on maybe what happened in India?
Sure, I understand, but I worked in the Indian Planning Commission almost 45 years ago, and I really enjoyed my stay there. The head of the agency that I worked for was Manmohan Singh, who later became Prime Minister of India, and the culture was, there's a different culture, and the culture is a more relaxed culture, and among the senior people, I think it was a more of a cooperative culture, and it seems to me that one of the reasons is that in India, seniority is taken very seriously. So there's no assistant who's trying to oust his boss to take over the job. I mean, it's not going to happen. Which of course also probably inhibits very good people from rising to the top also. I mean, there's two sides to it. But but the senior culture, at the senior level, it's a very cooperative. I found it a very cooperative feeling. It's not cutthroat,
Oh.
which to some extent you see in the U.S.
Mhm.
Maybe that's the what we call what I'm calling cutthroat, maybe what may be called dynamism. I don't know. but but I liked my stay there. Liked working with, and I still maintain relationship. I mean, I create the relationships that I still maintain some of them.
Mhm.
So you can see it was a more friendly kind of a thing. We were always going to each other's houses, having dinner with each other and lunch and so on. And in fact, I have a sort of an amusing story. Manmohan Singh, who was the head of the agency that I worked for, and as I said later, he became Prime Minister of India. He came to my office one evening at about 5 o'clock because a report I had submitted they had lost. So he came to ask me to kind of reconstruct it because even the copy was lost.
Mm-hmm.
So he came to my office, and so when he came, you called the central canteen to bring tea or coffee or something.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, they won't. I said, let me call for coffee. And he said, no, they won't come because it's after 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Canteen is closed. I said, let me call anyway. So I called, and they came and brought us coffee and served it, and it was very nice. And as he was leaving, I put a small amount of money on the tray. So then Manmohan Singh looked at me and said, now I know why you get service after 5 o'clock and I don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you understood it. Mm-hmm.
So, but in any case, it was, in those days, the Planning Commission was a very powerful agency, which it is no longer.
Oh.
I think it's essentially been disbanded. It was formed out of a Soviet type model, and everything had to go through the Planning Commission. One of the things that I had to work on was the Indian Airlines wanted to buy a number of aircraft, and so but it had to be approved by the Planning Commission.
Oh.
So, and I was involved in that.
So it was the Planning Commission was kind of like the BACP in Chicago. They have to approve. They're in charge of licenses, and let's say also the Federal Trade Commission. They have to approve mergers and all that.
But the Planning Commission had to do everything. But we were not the last step because money had to be found. That was another organization. The cabinet had something like the purchase of aircraft would go to the cabinet level.
What about the bureaucracy in India? Was there more bureaucracy? Did things happen faster or slower than things happen in the U.S.?
At my time, and things, this is 40 years ago, there was more bureaucracy, and also the bureaucracy was more powerful. The private sector was not that important because there wasn't that much of it. There were not that many there was not that much money in the private sector.
Yeah, what you're saying is that there weren't that many private businesses.
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, big businesses. There were small businesses, but not big businesses. There were, very number of small of big businesses. The Tatas had, I think someone estimated that they had 20% of the large companies in India, and Birlas, which had another 20%. So
what are those again?
They are people, the family names. Birla is one family name, and Tata is another family name.
Oh, okay. So it's one family, or it's just like a common surname, let's say like Jones in the U.S. Is it actually
no, Tata is a very unique name, and Birla is a very unique name.
Oh, so it is like the Rockefellers in the U.S.
Something like that. But even there didn't have that much spread. I mean, there wasn't that much private sector, so it was mainly government.
When you were in India, so you've worked there very long. And then how many years did you work there?
Where in India?
Yes,
About a year.
about a year. Oh, okay.
I was there as sort of a one year stint during my sabbatical.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if you were there longer. But anyway, in that 1 year, what did you learn that you came back to the U.S. that you were able to use?
You're putting me in a very high level. Not that high level. I was. I don't know. It probably improved my perspective working in two different systems. And I lived in Canada for a while, so it probably improved my perspective, broadened me to some extent. I know that, for instance, when I was in the school board, I kept asking to get experience from other countries, whereas the general mindset was that we're going to stay within the US kind of. So I was asking the question, why is Korea doing so well? Why is Singapore doing so well with education? So it gives you that perspective of looking outside, looking broader. So it helped me.
Well, did the board listen to your suggestions? Were they able to act on them?
They did listen, because how can you say that I'm not going to look there? But how seriously they took it is a different issue.
So if they had taken it more seriously, our education system over here, the CPS, might have turned out a little better than it is now.
Well, I'd like to believe that, but that may not be true.
Well, Ashish Sen, thank you so much for joining us on WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM today. We really enjoyed your insight and all your experience, and we hope that you will join us again. But also, we often get inquiries from our listeners with additional questions. If a listener wanted to contact you with additional questions, how would they be able to contact you?
Oh, they could email me.
Okay, what is your email?
Ashish, ASHISH, at uic.edu.
Okay.
Except that they may not get a good answer. I may not know their answer. But I'll always reply, but I'll say I don't know.
What you're saying is that you will try to answer any listener questions as best as you can.
Yes.
Well, you have answered our questions very well and shared so much knowledge with us. And thank you so much, Ashish Sen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Take this up now?
Yeah. Let me turn the meeting off. It's kind of hidden over here. Oh, I know. Here we go.